Hello, this is Charvey. I'll be analysing pro-level gameplay, focusing on the key turning points of particular games and how they came about and how they affected the rest of the game. Not only that, talking about what we can take away from this and implement into our solo queue play. Today, I will be looking at Vulcan versus Cloud9. This match was played on the 14th of August, week 9, day 1 of the American LCS. And the particular moment being that level 1 engage. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. So let's get straight to the game. So all games begin with picks and bans. So that's why it must be included in this video. The bans. What was achieved? Well, both these teams obviously weren't looking for the level 1 engage towards that as a major event. They were looking for post level 6. So Castin, Caitlyn, Twitch, Ari, Zach and Shen. Quite obvious why all of them were banned. You've got Castin and Ari, extremely good mobile, popular AP assassins with really, really good pick potential and stick potential, as in the ability to stick to someone even if they try and flash over a wall or that sort of ability. Twitch and Caitlyn, really, really good late game AD carries. And Twitch just having that dual potential, which can be unexpected for some teams. Zach obviously targeted Meteos. Needless to say, a very, very good jungler, very good at disrupting and pushing away the enemy team to disperse them with his ultimate. You've got Shen. Well, that's an overlap champion for both teams, but you've got the split push potential in there. So what did that take out of the level 1? Well, Caitlyn's Yordle snare traps, that's another way to check the brush, which was Cloud9's demise. Ari Charm, very potent CC, because considering it lasts a second and a half, I think. You got Twitch. Expunge would have been extreme damage output right there. Shen, if he'd have taken Taunt, that would have been incredible. Just incredible damage at the start of the game. Zach, stretching strike AoE slow and Castin silence. Oh, and Charm's duration is only 1 second at level 1. It would have still been very potent though, a second of doing nothing. Then the picks. Zed for Vulcan, Kennen, Zyra, Tristana, Lee Sin. Very team orientated fights, which are based on holding the enemy back, and then when they engage, the counter engage is there. They don't have too much engage unless it comes from Lee Sin or Kennen, who aren't going to be. Lee Sin's going to be quite tanky, but Kennen not so much. So they are quite a diverse team. Not only that, they have the split push potential with Zed. Cloud9, Sona, Elise, Jarvan, Jace, Vayne. Now, Jace has got the ranged poke, and if he got ahead in lane high, well, he could. I mean, Jace is a lane bully as it is. Then they would have just disengaged all day. Sona, Song of Clarity, Acceleration Gate. They would have been uncatchable. And then when it comes to the engage, they have the perfect engage. Jarvan knock up, or at least cocoon into Jarvan knock up. Sona ult over the top, at which point Vayne can start hammering away on a specific target. And they only pull off this combo once, and it's right at the end of the game. They try it earlier, and that's when Xmithy and Bloodwater just nuke down Lemon Nation, because they are already quite far behind. But Sona's ult misses Zuna, and then he sidesteps the Jarvan EQ as it is. But yeah, they only get that whole combo off once in the game, at which point Jace's Shock Blast is blocked by minions. And the damage from balls is just... Sorry, the damage from Psycho Sid is just too great for them. Because he cataclysms in and they all go in, but then Zyra ult right over the top of them as Kennen ult. And that's essentially the reply that Vulcan had for everything. So they both have very strong team fights. They both have very strong teams, and if either of them snowballs, then that's a lot of damage that could get out of hand very, very quickly with regards to Vayne and Tristana. And so the game begins. Now, as you can see, both teams head off down the mid lane in an orderly fashion. I will talk about the items a little bit later that they pick up. And as you can see, Lemon Nation goes toward his own red buff. This being good for them, very good, because it means that they can ward the opposing red buff, do all of this, and at the end of the day, if Xmithy goes, well, you've probably taken my red buff, I'm now going to challenge for yours, they will have vision of it. So, all of this happens, and I'll talk about all the action and break it down into detail in just a little bit. But as you can see, the whole gist of what happens is Cloud9 see Zuna Bloodwater, Psycho Sid, and Xmithy. But they haven't seen ManCloud. And at this point, they've now lost sight of everyone. And right at the end, they only see Xmithy, and they push him away before face checking this brush. At which point, I'm going to stop it here. So, from Cloud9's perspective, initially, ManCloud was completely unseen. Psycho Sid and Xmithy were both seen at the mid lane, and Bloodwater and Zuna were both seen at the red side, red buff, by the ward. So they know where the other wards are, so they know about the Vulcan vision, which will be very good for when Charvey Meteos goes in there. He'll know that he's been spotted and know to prepare for it. Now, Xmithy is still seen at the mid lane. He gets pushed away by Jace's Shock Blast, so he wouldn't be able to fight immediately at the left side of the mid lane brush. But as you can see, he comes back for the later fight. Zuna and Bloodwater have both retreated, but they don't have too much vision of that area. They could have based, they could have walked out, they'd have no idea. Psycho Sid is now MIA. He could have based, he could have walked anywhere over the left hand side of the jungle. ManCloud completely unseen, and his items completely unknown. I'll get into this a bit later. They know Xmithy will not be at the initial fight, as I said, but they feel assured that they have more damage than Vulcan because of the Hymn of Valor aura, giving +4 AP and +4 AD, I think, to everyone. Not only that, they are pretty confident in going in because of the fact that they have a lot of vision casting spells. And again, I'll cover this a bit later. Now, from Vulcan's perspective, well, they saw 4 of Cloud9 push into the right-hand side of the mid lane brush. They then see Lemon Nation as Cloud9 push into their red buff. So they know where the whole of Cloud9 is. At which point they're safe to push in. ManCloud was sent over there initially, but it's fine now. However, I don't think that they knew for sure if Zuna and Bloodwater were spotted, but the fact that ManCloud hung back at the back of the enemy red buff seems to me as if they knew that it may have been warded, and therefore taking a precaution to maybe bait them into a fight, but also so that they couldn't see his items or his stats, anything like that. Now, Xmithy spots everyone pushing into the left hand side of the mid lane brush, and Vulcan, they're probably thinking at this point to guard the blue buff, because after they guard the blue buff and Cloud9 sort of, oh look, oh Vulcan's there, and then they back off, Psycho Sid will base and go bot, so the duo lane can go top. With blue, Lee Sin could easily contest the Cloud9 red buff because it's now been warded by Vulcan quite extensively. 2 wards were thrown down. They see all of Cloud9 push into the left mid brush, however, and because it's warded and they can see Cloud9, they immediately set themselves for the fight. And Xmithy runs in and joins with Sonic Wave. So now we're talking about the notable spells. Well, here's the teams, and here's the notable spells that they all took, apart from Condemn and Cocoon. As you can see, if they'd have taken Condemn and Cocoon on Cloud9 side, they'd have had a lot more hard crowd control. As it was, unfortunately, they didn't take them. I'd have liked them to have taken them, but Elise's jungle would have been screwed. And, yeah. But they took Volatile Spiderling and Damascian Standard. So even though Vulcan had more potent crowd control with Grasping Root Snare and Rocket Jump AoE slow, they had Volatile Spiderling, Shock Blast, and Damascian Standard. Those 3 grant vision, and when they walk into the brush to the left of mid lane, they did push Xmithy away, but they didn't check it, and they didn't check the next one either. It was as if they were saving Damascian Standard for the blue buff brush, or the brush to the northeast of Wolves. And then Volatile Spiderling, like, the only one that was on cooldown was Shock Blast from Jace, because that forced Xmithy away right at the end. So I'm not too sure what happened there, because that's essentially what let them down. One of those spells going in would have spotted out Vulcan and would have prevented everything, and may have actually pushed them and let them win the game. As for Vulcan, the other spells, you've got 3 AoE spells and 2 single target spells, and all of them were comboed so heavily onto balls, so he dropped immediately. It was ridiculous. Whereas Cloud9, Hymn of Valor is a little bit haphazard with its targeting. Tumble is good in terms of focused and high damage output. Damascian Standard AoE gives the buff as well, which will help everyone. Shock Blast, as it was, if it would have hit Zuna would have died, but it went for Xmithy and didn't quite pick him up. And then the Volatile Spiderling AoE. I think it goes off right at the start of the team fight, but I'm not too sure, because there's so much going on. Now, this is looking at Lemon Nation, because as you can see, these 3 images that I've thrown down are of me in a game stacking power chord, and that's what it looks like. Bottom left, this was when they clicked on Lemon Nation. So as you can see, he's pressed Q once, and he does it at base. I mean, you can watch the replay and watch his mana drop once. Now, I don't think he presses it again, at which point you're missing the power chord. You still have the aura, but that power chord could have taken down Xmithy, because he flashes as it is, and he gets taken extremely low by the Shock Blast. However, there are other ways that could have finished him off that I'll talk about as well. Not only that, but the power chord could have been used on Zuna, at which point they wouldn't have chased and used up, I think it's the barrier of Vayne right at the end of the team fight. So yeah, just a small misplay by Lemon Nation. Finally, looking at the items. Well, on Cloud9 side, you've got Duran's Shield, Duran's Blade, Machete and Potions only. By the potions only of support, I mean that a team fight, that are going to be used in team fights. Obviously, wards were used to set up the team fight, but they won't be used in team fights. Very cost-efficient items for their stats from Cloud9. Vulcan side, Duran's Blade, and instead of Duran's Shield, Elixir of Fortitude. Okay. But the thing is, Cloud9 don't spot this, and I think if they had have spotted it, they'd have been a lot more cautious because of the fact that at level 1 it gives 120 health and 15 attack damage off the bat, which are a lot of stats. And even when Xmithy backed out, ManCloud tapped that, and then suddenly his auto attacks do so much damage, and he, relatively to the other members that were there, is now so incredibly tanky that Cloud9's only option was to back out, because otherwise he's just going to take all of them down one at a time. So, the fight, and it's over very quickly. As I said, you can see the crowd control and the focus onto Bulls, and then immediately onto Elimination. And right at the end, Bloodwater uses everything to try and get the Vayne, but doesn't quite end up. And it's only after they get the kill on to Bulls that ManCloud actually pops his red elixir, at which point Xmithy backs out, so he becomes the new front line. But yeah, it was extremely well played by Vulcan, that entire segment. So, looking at the Summoner's Burn, well, yeah, Vulcan had burned pretty much everything. Aside from Zuna, who still has Flash and Barrier, as opposed to Sneaky's Flash going down, so I meant Flash earlier, not the Barrier. However, as I've highlighted on the Cloud9 side, both Bulls and High still have their Ignite, and if they had have been used, that's Xmithy that could have been taken down, and potentially Zuna as well. And a 3-for-2 would have been a lot more favourable for them, and they probably could have come back from it as well. Which, as it was, they couldn't. So, from this point of view, since both solo laners still have Flash and Ignite, they have the advantage going into lane. But ManCloud will have the advantage early game from his elixir, which will tick over until his Ignite comes back up, which covers most of the cooldown relative to High. And not only that, but Bulls as well will have an advantage. Sorry, like I said, will also have an advantage in lane, which will help compensate that. So I say advantage, but how much of an advantage? Well, Bulls dying was 400 for Bloodwater and 50 for Psychocid, ManCloud, Xmithy and Zuna. Elimination, 300 gold for Zuna, 50 for Psychocid, ManCloud and Bloodwater. Meteors, 300 for ManCloud, 38 for Psychocid, Zuna, Xmithy and Bloodwater. I don't know why it's slightly less gold, but it was. So, the result: plus 488 gold for Bloodwater, 400 for ManCloud, 388 for Zuna, 138 for Psychocid, and 88 for Xmithy. That's quite a lot of gold, but what was it turned into? Because obviously Bloodwater got the most gold, but he's the support, so that's not too great, is it? Well, it depends what you buy with it. All of this gold was converted into a regen bead, vision ward, and a ward. So going into the laning phase, Bloodwater had so much more vision than Elimination. Not only that, he's part of the way rushed towards his Philosopher's Stone, which is more gold, and the health regen in lane is really nice. ManCloud had the Duran's Blade and Potions. High went back and only bought potions. So now they're equal in laning phase once the Elixir of Fortitude has run out, which means High can't be this lane bully right from the get-go. Zuna also bought basic boots, so now Sneaky's passive is negated essentially by the basic boots, and potions for the sustain. Psychocid bought wards and potions, and Xmithy bought a ward and potions. So throughout the laning phase, one of the key trends was that Vulcan had wards across the river. So they played safe. They played the laning phase safe, which is normally what Cloud9 would do. So it looked as if it was very, very even. Why? Because Cloud9 equaled the CS. As soon as they hit level 6, though, Vulcan knew that they were slightly ahead in terms of experience, but also this item lead that they, because of the initial gold lead. And as soon as they hit level 6, the wards moved into the enemy's jungle and they pushed for fights. I mean, immediately, as soon as Mancloud hit level 6, he goes and he steals the walls for meteors. He wants a fight. And that's what happened. When Xmithy then goes to steal the red buff from meteors for the second time, after killing him, then they go for the top lane. The ward spots meteors coming down to get the Vulcan red buff. Mancloud and, like I said, push him away. They take the top turret with the duo lane and Xmithy. Then they base and go for Dragon. They force Cloud9 around, and it worked extremely effectively. So, in solo queue, how can you take advantage of an early lead? Well, you buy wards. Wards give vision. Vision gives the ability to make informed decisions. Those informed decisions shall lead and should lead to objectives and kills, which lead to more gold, which lead to more items and wards. And the whole thing goes round. The cycle of wards continues. This has been Charvey. Thanks for watching.